Right, I am back painting. Seems like it's been a minute since my last painting video because I just can't get enough of that gaming content, I suppose. In my local gaming store, they're running a painting competition and I don't like to be left out. Reading the description, I was confused about the mini of the month. What is that? Someone told me Games Workshop give a free mini away and I would not believe it. Free ship from Games Workshop indeed. Yeah, I've been out of the GW ecosystem a little while, I suppose, but nope, it's true. So inspired by the mini of the month, the competition was just to paint a single gaunt, any variant. When you can get a mini for £0, which is somewhere in the region of $0 or about €0, I think, you have license to just experiment and go wild. If it goes horrendously wrong, then you've lost nothing but gained knowledge, the most important of all things. The only thing I knew for sure is that I would avoid the classic Tyranid colour scheme of the one colour for the carapace thing and another for the other softer bits. Another part of this was there was a limit on colours. You get 5 colours, your choice of a red, yellow and a blue, and then black and white. If you know your colour theory, this isn't that restrictive as you can kind of just mix the primary colours and black and white to make basically every other colour. So I resolved to challenge myself by picking up some versions that weren't primary. I went for a dark red, but then obviously forgot my own brief because I immediately chose a kind of cyan blue and a very saturated yellow. Before starting, I messed around with some Uhu glue to make a gross gummed up base. Let me know if you'd like to see that in its own video. I think the effect did look quite cool. To get an idea of the palette I was working with, I threw down a triangle of my main colours and mixed them together. It was at this point I realised I hadn't actually challenged myself that much and maybe could have gone for some spicier choices for each colour, but I'd already invested a whole 2.5 minutes into filming and I'm no quitter. I didn't bother testing the black or the white because they make lighter and darker versions of the colours here, go figure. I decided not to rely on them too much anyway, as it's always more interesting to use colours than black and white. To me, this kind of challenge is all about experimenting, so I thought to myself, why not just throw colour down to start and see what I like. I put my colours directly onto the mini and just mixed them as they went. Kind of went for a yellowy red at the top and then went more blues so that it mixed into be a green down the bottom. And once I had some cool gradients, I dry brushed some white with a bit of yellow in there just to bring up the details and see enough to make some colour decisions. I was liking this red-yellow gradient, but I really liked that blue and I was thinking of the colouring those like terrifying tropical bugs have. So I decided to have blue in some really random places. Some of them I threw the colour down, but some I glazed to get a bit of a transition early on. I liked it on the limbs and the little vent things, and holy hell, I've just noticed that's a separate guy on his back. Maybe I'd have known that if I looked into the lore behind any of the new range. Well, that thing shall henceforth be known as Billy Brainboy. I wasn't too sure about that shoulder armour, but it was there for now. After this step, I watered down my red and used it as a shade. This was because a lot of it was looking quite yellow by this point, and I wanted to bring back some of that deep red in the darker areas. Now, things are coming together, but it's looking a bit washed out on the highlights. I got my yellow, thinned it a bit and put it on the higher surfaces and edges and oh hell yeah, that step has done some work. Look at this guy, he looks so poisonous. The kind of thing ancient warriors would put in their blow darts or something. Right, at this point I decided that decor would be a nice stomach acid green and maybe his lower appendages would kind of move towards that tone. Some kind of lighting trick, or maybe that's where the acid has gotten him. The interpretation is in the eye of the beholder, so it's not for me to say. Whatever the case, it was starting to come together as the manifestation of my nightmares. At this point, I wanted a bit more definition, so our mythical black paint made an appearance. I mixed a bit of blue in because I just don't like pure black, and washed it into the deeper recesses. I focused a bit around Billy Brainboy, although not too much, as I think it's more fun to leave him subtle and people can discover it the way I did. What can I say? I think Billy's a bit shy. This process has a lot of back and forth, which is fine on a model of this size. We really want it to pop and it's just one tiny little insignificant guy. Now I wanted to re-establish those blues, so I glazed it back into the places I wanted it. That throat area is so insignificant, but I thought it looked damn cool as a bright blue area. Maybe that's where he makes his venom? Maybe that's where Billy stores his luggage when he hitches a ride on this generous gaunt. Who am I to say? At this point, I might just reiterate that I don't know too much about the Tyrannid lore, but my interpretation that Billy and Large Marge just want to see the galaxy together is probably quite accurate. Okay, the colours are looking cool, so now I want to get some higher definition on Billy and Marge. I mix a tiny bit of white into the blue for the blue parts and weirdly the yellow for the yellow parts and start some edge highlighting. Normally I hate this step, but on a mini this small it should be quite quick. I even have the leftover patience to do another brighter pass once this is done. I decided to do a bit of non-metallic metal effect by adding some solid white on Marge's cuddling appendages. This is a real quick, rough NMM, and once I'd established highlights I glazed back down to blend a little. Now let's make this acid look super gross. I used an undiluted yellow and just glooped it all over the high points and stringy bits. The thinking was any blobby bits from using thick paint would just add to that stringy, globby, gloopy mess. Once this dried, I watered down some of my red and put it in a few places just to make more interesting tones and kind of shade areas. I was very careful to avoid the bright looking areas, as I want this to look less like a fresh wound in the landscape and more like one with a healthy dose of infection. Now I just neatened up a few more colour transitions with so much glazing and painted the rim black to get an idea of the overall piece. I pushed red into the recesses to deepen the shade again and smoothed out the edge highlighting a bit more. Finally, I decided the blue on the shoulders was a bit out of place, so I painted up the orangey yellow and then highlighted it up. Continuing with finishing touches, I added black into the green mix and used it to shade basically the entire bottom third of the model, kind of using it as a shade and a glaze in the same technique. To do this, you basically need to glaze with more paint than you'd usually have on your brush and end the brush stroke in the recesses so a bit of paint pools there. As with regular glazing, this works well when built up over a few coats. The rest of this was just going back and forth between the aforementioned techniques to get the best look I could, so there's not really much to say about it. I'm not very good at small talk though, so how's the family? All good? Going anywhere nice for the holidays? What everyone's come up? Should we just listen to some music while I paint? Okay. Now, to finish the whole messy affair, I went back to some Uhu glue. I mixed it with the green and yellow and just blobbed, pulled and strung it all around to look like even more dissolving, infectious, gross stuff. And that's the mini done. It's already in the cabinet at my local gaming store, so wish me luck. Taking an opportunity to do an isolated, quick project is something I'd really recommend. It can really get your head out of the other longer projects and just refresh your interest in the hobby. As always, thank you for watching. Links below to my Instagram and other socials, and if you'd like to travel the galaxy with Billy Brainboy, then have a look at my Patreon and Ko-fi pages and consider supporting the channel in whatever way you feel comfortable. Okay, bye!